finishing out our On the Clock series today with picks 26 through 32. I always enjoy finishing up these shows because at the end of it, you get a 32 pick mock draft. It looks like it was done with 5 different people and it goes in a bunch of different directions, but it's still a fun little reward waiting at the end of this exercise. Here to help me with the final 7 picks of the first round. The first time either of these guys have been on the show somehow, it's a mistake on my end, but I'm very excited that it's finally able to make it happen. From the Bootleg Football Podcast, it's Brett Kollmann and EJ Snyder. Gentlemen, how you guys doing?
We're doing great, man. And I want to thank you for having us on, despite you being a road warrior this week, trying to do a podcast setup in a hotel room across the country. I've lived that life before. Believe me, we know how hard that is. We appreciate you.
I am in an Airbnb in Palm Springs, and it has been a while since I've had internet connection that has forced me to be creative in the way that we're handling a podcast. That's why this episode is not on YouTube. A bunch of different things that you have to worry about when you're doing this stuff remotely, but Nine Inch Nails is playing at Coachella, and what am I supposed to do? I had to be here.
You kind of have no choice here.
Yeah, exactly.
Your hands are tied. You need to go. But
a man's got to do what he's got to do.
Yeah, you got to see that show.
Very excited about having both of you. Everyone who's listened to the first 4 episodes of this, we know how it goes, right? So I'm going to give you guys 3 different options for each of these teams when they're on the clock. I want your choices to be what you would do in this scenario. And you guys do not have to come to a consensus opinion. I actually think that's a more fun way to do this. If you disagree, that's the better way that this is going to go. I was talking to Brett a little bit yesterday about this. This stretch is fun because when you're getting to the better teams in the league, teams picking at the end of the first round, in theory, these are some of the teams with fewer glaring holes. And so you could go in several different directions with this pick. And so I feel like I had a little bit of a hard time narrowing down the options for these, but I think that it's going to make it even more interesting. When you guys went through the first 25 picks, because I sent both of them to you, was there anybody among those picks, Brett, that you thought was either A, surprising, or B, you were a little bit disappointed because when you had thought about this range of the draft, you had often paired that player with one of the teams that we were going to talk about?
I found your 14-15 of Venga Ioane falling to the Bucks, but more importantly, getting past Baltimore. I found that fascinating. And I understand, okay, Kenyon Sadiq's on the board, like we love that. But Baltimore Ravens fans have gone through, let's just say, some trials and tribulations with Daniel Faalele. And to have the potential solution on the board, the first real solution they've had, like high-end solution they've had at the guard spot since like Yanda retired, and them going tight end. I found that fascinating.
Yeah, I was also a little bit surprised by that one. I think I'm curious what you think about this, EJ. Like the idea of Kenyon Sadiq in Baltimore, I think it makes sense when you just consider it from like a macro perspective of if you look at what Declan Doyle did, and you look at the amount of 12 personnel and the fact that Durham Smythe is currently their number 2 tight end. He was literally the number 3 tight end on the team that Declan Doyle coached last year. So in your mind, it's like, well, he'll just bump down to be the number 3 tight end. We need a number 2 guy to like actually make this go. The Bears drafted Colson Loveland last year. But when you think about Kenyon Sadiq's skill set with Mark Andrews, like is either of them the type of inline tight end that would kind of be one of the pillars of that strategy? Or do we feel like there might be a little bit of redundancy with those 2 guys if that was the way that Baltimore decided to go?
Yeah, it's incredibly timely because I had volunteered a couple of weeks ago for an expert mock draft, and they said, what pick do you want? And they gave me the options, and I said, oh, I'll take Ravens. Completely forgot about it because, yeah, gestures and everything. And got pinged last night, and they're like, hey, you're up in that mock draft. And I was like, Ravens, okay. So he sends me the board just like you did, and both Sadiq and Iheanachor are on there. And I was like, oh, man, I want to go Sadiq so bad, but if I do it, I'm just going to hurt my own heart. So I picked Vega for the Ravens. And, in terms of Sadiq in the offense with Declan Doyle, if you can't fit Sadiq into your offense, I'm not really sure I want your offense because he's a better blocker than most people give him credit for. He bows up. He gives a lot of effort. And these are similar conversations we had to Colson Loveland last year. Everybody's like, oh, he's a great receiver, so he can't block. And I was like, he can block. Go watch the tape. It's not necessarily digging out defensive ends. But if you look at, everybody says wide receiver for the Ravens. I get it. But Kenyon Sadiq brings you a lot of that functionality in the same way that Colson Loveland brought that functionality to Ben. Declan saw all that, and if he can't plug Sadiq into that offense and make it go, I'm not looking at Sadiq as the problem there.
Ioane and Sadiq at 14 is like you walk into a food court at lunch, and in one spot you can get a salad, and at one spot you can get a burger, and the burger looks so good and it smells so good, but if you eat it, you're gonna feel so sluggish and tired in like 2 hours and be unable to finish the day. And so the salad is not more appealing in the moment, but when you eat it, you know that it was the right choice like 2 hours afterward. That to me feels like the choice between like a sexy tight end and the best guard in the draft at 14 if you're the Ravens.
I love the
Or it's
analogy,
a healthy salad and a salad covered with dressing that's actually way more calories than the burger would be.
It's all these croutons all over it. Yeah.
I love the analogy, but the fact that we're comparing a guard to a salad, not a burger, seems so wrong to me.
That is true. That is insulting. All right, let's get to the picks here. Let's start with the Buffalo Bills at 26. So with some of these guys, I'm going to open the door for you guys to at least fight for other players at the position, because I just, that could be a flavor thing. And so we could talk through the different options at some of the positions specifically, but I think this is more about giving you the positions, and then we can work through the players specifically as we go through it. So for the Bills at 26, option 1 is draft Malachi Lawrence from UCF. So the edge rusher bucket among all the guys that are available there. Dane gave Lawrence to them in his 7-round mock. We can talk about the other potential edges here too, because there are still a bunch of them available. Option 2 is draft Casey Concepcion from Texas A&M. Again, there are other receivers here that we can discuss, but Concepcion getting to 26 here, the idea of him playing with Josh Allen, I don't know, it makes me tingly. I'm very excited about that, even after they traded for DJ Moore. Option 3, speaking of eating your vegetables, is actually draft Chase Bisontis. At 26. Which I think somebody did this. I want to say maybe in Fran's 7-round mock that he released today, he did this. But I think I saw somebody put Bisontis to the Bills at 26. Obviously, David Edwards moves on in free agency. This allows you to keep a strength to strength. And, I think if you drop him in there and you can still really rely on that offensive line to be the engine of your team, that's at least a little bit appealing to me. So that's what we got, Brett. We got draft Malachi Lawrence from UCF, draft Casey Concepcion, or draft Chase Bisontis, the guard from Texas A&M. You tell me what you are doing if you are the Buffalo Bills at 26.
EJ, I don't know about you, but I'm between Casey and Chase on this one. And it's not that like I'm anti Malachi Lawrence. It's just if I was going to go edge, there were other edges on the board that I'd probably be looking at for them. I'm looking at TJ Parker. I'm looking at Kelter Falk.
Yeah.
Maybe even Cassius Howell.
Yeah, because I didn't have any of those players in my stack, Robert, for the Bills.
Interesting. Who would be the top of the list for you?
So guard, I would go guard, not center, and I would make it Emmanuel Pregnon, because I'm looking at the depth chart and Alec Anderson is there, and Alec Anderson is not stopping me in any way from picking an Emmanuel Pregnon. At DT McDonald, I'm less hot on that pick. At defensive end or edge, Falk and Parker, the power guys, were the guys that Brett brought up, and they were on my list as well. The possibility of inside linebacker, but I don't love CJ Allen enough to do it at this spot. And then McNeil Warren, because they could use some safety help too, and he's still on the board. So that was my stack, and it didn't include any of the 3 players that you brought up. So there you go.
Well, I'm thinking about McNeil Warren for big nickel too. That's
And that was, so here's my thing with Lawrence. And if I were picking for the Bills 2 years ago, I think Falk would have been the first name, and TJ Parker, those would have been the names I would have brought up. I'm just wondering, are we looking at a different flavor of pass rusher here now that we have Jim Leonard in there versus what we've seen the Bills do at that spot during the entire Brandon Beane era, just because we're moving to a different defense with potentially different priorities? I don't know, Brett, necessarily how to weigh that at this point. And so I think that's why I was more inclined to throw out a Lawrence versus a Kelter Falk, who is exactly the player that I would have mentioned, maybe along with TJ Parker, if we had done this exercise a year ago.
So another part of the Jim Leonard discussion is Jim is so good at manufacturing pressure, even without having a quote unquote guy at edge. Like he throws all sorts of of crazy pressures or even simulated pressures at you. Like, he will kind of poke and prod throughout the game to understand, okay, if we show you this look, here's the protection we think we're going to get. Like, he's very famous for how well he charts offenses, for down and distance and field position. Like, I I trust him to get pass rush out of this group, even though they don't really have any great like pass rushers.
They sure don't.
So it's one of those where it's like, could they, dip into the day two edge group here, which there's a bunch of them, and get similar production compared to what I think they could get out of the day two receivers, or rather the flavor of day two receivers that are like Casey Concepcion, who, by the way, is like super Billsy as a receiver. Like EJ and I have talked about this on our show. Like, out of all the receivers in this class, Casey might be the most Billsy one. Oh boy, this is
Are
tough.
we sure that's a good thing at this point?
Yeah,
Might not
fair.
be.
Yeah.
I do kind of like Bisontis just as out of these options. I like Bisontis just because I'm really worried about the identity of this team shifting too much away from, we have a great offensive line, we run the ball well, we're going to be the python, the boa constrictor, we're going to rely on Josh to make 5 plays for us a game, but the rest of it is just, we're going to pound you into dust. I worry if they get away from that identity on offense, they don't really have the personnel to make other styles work.
That's kind of why I like it, because it just feels like they've done so many things early in the draft, especially in the first round, where they've had these like theoretical ideas for what those picks were going to be. And the pass catchers are obviously the first place you point to with that, where it's just like, we're going to draft Dalton Kincaid and we're going to play this like 11 and a half personnel. We're going to be this matchup nightmare. We're going to do this and we're going to do that. And we're going to draft Keon Coleman. And even though he, struggles against press coverage as like a true X receiver, we're still going to use him that way because he has the body type. And we're going to play this thing where everybody eats and we're going to have all these different kinds of guys. And it's just like, you know what? This. Let's draft the guard who we can drop in the middle of this thing, and just, we know this is going to align with the way we've been and the way we want to be. And you never want to call any pick safe, but part of me just feels like this is one where you can pencil it in and just feel good about how it aligns, and there's less guesswork involved with how this is supposed to fit into who you want to be as a team than a lot of the directions that this team has gone early in the draft over the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, and you've got a rookie head coach who is an offensive mind, and that plays in. Like, it played in with Ben last year. It plays in with Joe Brady this year. Yes, he's been with the Bills, but this is his first draft when he is the man. He is in charge. I mean, as much as you might believe that, Bean might say something different, but I think it does matter. And same thing. If I'm going to walk away from day one of the draft as the Bills and sleep well, for me, it's Emmanuel Pregnon. I have him rated higher than Bisontis. He fits the tenor of this city, of this team. He's an absolute mauler. He's better in the pass protection than people think he is. He did not give up a lot of pressures at Oregon last year, and he is just an absolute piece of granite as a human being. Stood next to that guy twice now, the Oregon Pro Day and at the Combine, and there isn't it's hard for me to think of anybody in this draft that's built better than him.
Well, Bisontis is also a freak athlete, and while I think Pregnon is better right now, I could see the path where Bisontis ends up being even better in the NFL just because he's so untapped, which unfortunately tends to happen with A&M players these days, where it's like they go to A&M and like you see the potential and you're like, why are they better in the NFL than when they're in college?
Why wasn't Texas A&M national champ last year when you look at all the talent?
They're going to have like 14 guys drafted this year, and it's like, really? They didn't go that far in the playoffs? All right. So yeah, we'll go Bisontis. I know some people say safe. I say practical.
All right, I like it. My full-throated support of it as I started talking myself into it more and more. Okay. The other you mentioned defensive tackle, I think, is a position worth throwing out. I think Dallin Walker was promising as a rookie. They love him. Like, I mean, they loved him since day one. I think they really want him to work out and be a thing. And so I think he's going to get every opportunity to be a really important part of what they're doing. And they drafted TJ Sanders in the second round last year. I mean, you think about all the resources they threw at the interior defensive line. So in theory, they could probably use another body. Do they do it early? I think is a worthwhile question. And then again, receiver, edge rusher. I'm with you a little bit, Brett, about just the idea that if they can manufacture pressure, that's always a little bit scary to me. And I know my crack that I made is partly in jest. I know they signed Bradley Chubb in free agency. I'm aware of that. I am
Does
aware
anybody
that Bradley
care?
Chubb is on the roster. Listen, that's I think they paid a healthy amount for him. I also think if he stays healthy, he can be an effective, useful player for them. I just think there are a lot of questions about the first caveat associated with that. All right, so we have Chase Bisontis to the Bills at 26. The San Francisco 49ers picking at 27. Option 1 is draft Keldrick Falk or your best available edge. If it is not Falk, we can talk about that. But again, we get back to body types. This one is like they drafted Mikael Williams last year. Like, let's go with the other young, long guy and just throw him into the mix. You still have Keon White there, but he's in the final year of his rookie deal. Williams is coming off that torn ACL, and so you could absolutely make an argument that edge is still a need for the Niners, even after drafting one in the first last year. Option 2 is draft Max Iheanachor. Okay, Trent Williams in the final year of his deal. Obviously a lot of smoke about that. $46 million cap hit this year. They've got to find a successor at some point, and I feel like it's easier to do that a year early. This also seems like the draft where you may be able to do it just with the tackle options that might be on the board here. We can also talk about other tackle options. I think Blake Miller is probably the other guy that's still on the board here after some of the ones that just went off the show we did with Mike Renner last week. Option 3, he's back, is draft Casey Concepcion.
There are going to be guys.
If you're the Niners.
Yeah. There are going to be guys at this point that are going to sort of cascade until you pick them. It's like, well, he's an option. Didn't pick him. He's an option. Didn't pick him. And that's going to happen for a bunch of guys here.
It was funny.
I know what I prefer, though, each.
Hmm?
I mean, Robert, you know this better than almost anybody. Tackles don't hit free agency. It's actually kind of a miracle they got Trent in the first place.
Well, they had to trade for him.
Good tackles.
I mean,
yeah.
They didn't have to trade a lot.
And that's only just because
they still
of
had to trade for him.
Yeah. And I if there was a different owner of that franchise at that time, it probably wouldn't have happened in the first place. And the Niners never would have got Trent in the first place, which means their offense probably wouldn't have been as good, which means they probably wouldn't have gone on these playoff runs to begin with. And I can count on more than one hand the amount of games, especially big games, over the last few years that I think Colton McKivitz has cost this team. Now, was he better in 2025? Sure. Do I care that much? Not really. And to your point, you also need a Trent successor. And you're not going to get that Trent successor in free agency because good tackles don't hit free agency or very rarely hit free agency. I mean, Dan Moore got $20 million. What are we doing here? So, EJ, I don't know about you. I favor Iheanachor here just because who better to learn under than Trent? He's still new to football and he's already this good. Absolute freak of nature athlete. He's going to go in the first round. Like, he's not getting past New England, in my opinion, anyway. So this is the perfect range for him. If McKivitz beats him out as a rookie, fine. That's cool with me. I really don't want to look at 2027 for this team, in the future for this team, where we're potentially in a post-Trent world anyway, and they have no answers on the roster.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that approach either. Unlike the Bills, my Niners slate lined up pretty well with the guys you put out there, Robert. Miller and Iheanachor were the two tackles. If I have to choose between them, I'm choosing Max. You mentioned the two bigger edges, Falk and Parker. Again, looking at the roster, this was where I got one of those sort of, moments with a fit that I hadn't had previously, and that's why I love doing these exercises. I think Cassius Howell here is a consideration. Like, if a team knew how to use him, and some of these teams wouldn't because of type or their defensive coordinator or whatever, he doesn't fit in every system. None of the edges do this year, really. I was like, oh, I really like Iheanachor here for all the reasons we said. And I would probably lean that way because they do not come available, but neither do premium pass rushers. And if you believe, if John Lynch believes that Cassius Howell is a guy that can get him consistent pressure off the edge, and he's demonstrated that in college, like, if they're comfortable with the person and the player, I could see him being a sort of either or here. If it's me, I'd probably take Max because I like him as a player better. I think the raw label has been misapplied. Whenever you have a young athletic tackle who hasn't been in the sport a long time, they go, "Oh, he's raw." I'm looking at his tape going, "Look at the top pass rushers." Again, the age argument is one of my least favorite because I don't know about you guys, but I wasn't aware that if you're starting a 24-year-old player in college, the rule is that the opponent has to start an 18-year-old.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of that there was nobody on their side that was 24 or 25 that's been there the same amount of time that they're also going to turn into chopped liver. So anyways, Iheanachor, super high end ceiling. And yes, you are getting to the brink here. And I don't want to get to the brink and then be forced to make a move. I would rather have a Max Iheanachor who's been in the system for a year and is ready, maybe wins the job as a rookie outright. That would also be great. But he's nowhere near his ceiling, but he's also not raw. He is technically proficient right now and getting better, and that's a scary thought.
They paid McKivitz, and I assume that they're committed to him, at least in like, the near term, right? But this is a scenario where, again, you're getting a year ahead of it. There is no guarantee that Trent doesn't miss time based on how the last couple of years have gone and the fact that he's getting a little bit older. So I think the worst case scenario here is you have a swing tackle you feel good about. They signed Verdarian Lowe in free agency, and so you have a swing tackle you feel potentially much better about. And every argument we've used about Iheanachor going to a place like Philly, right, where he gets to sit and learn for a year, the same would be true in a place like San Francisco. And so I think a lot of the benefits there are the same they would be in any other scenario where he kind of default redshirts for a year. So I agree. And the Cassius Howe thing is interesting because I feel like you can go one of two ways with like an edge you can suggest for the Niners. You can go with some of the types that they've done before, right? Like last year with Mikael Williams, or you can say, well, we already have a Mikael Williams at home. And so why wouldn't we go with somebody who has a little bit more juice as the third person in that edge rush rotation, especially as you just lost Bryce Huff to free agency, who was kind of like a DPR type for you. And so I think there are two different thoughts you could apply to what type of edge rusher the Niners might want in a scenario like this. But I think I'm with you guys. I don't think they'll do this, by the way, because I think that they'll do the thing that is fun and appealing and will make them better right now. And so the idea of them drafting a receiver, I think, is more likely than it is them eating their vegetables and taking Max Iheanachor in the first round. But we're the ones doing the exercise, or you guys are. And so I do think this is a very reasonable place to land with Iheanachor going to the Niners.
We know that Kyle has a soft spot for receivers. Like
I
when he
can't remember
it's
who
like
it was.
first round receivers and fourth round running backs.
I can't remember who it was. I think it was Ian Hartitz the other day joked that I'd like to see, and then he listed off all the receivers in the draft, and then it said in a Shanahan system. And my response,
Yeah.
I was gonna quote tweet it and say Kyle might take all of them in the first round. He might take all 15
Even after signing
receivers
Mike
in the
Evans.
first round. Yes. Listen, they still need one. The Christian Kirk's on a 1-year deal. Like, it's them. We joke about it. If they drafted a receiver, they had Concepcion in on a visit this week. If they drafted a receiver in the first round, I wouldn't even blink at it based on their history and based on the way the roster is constructed. But again, I think you can make a really serious argument that it's time. Like, we've talked about it for a while when they're going to do this with the tackle, but the way that this lines up, I think you can make a very serious argument that now is the time.
I think you could also make a serious argument that Brandon Ayuk nuking the deal to New England ended up hurting the Niners way more than they ever thought it would.
Absolutely. I mean, we don't talk about that often. We think about like the sliding doors moments with the Niners, obviously you think about the Trey Lance stuff and you think about some of the injuries that impacted maybe some of the 2 or 3 year team building plans they might have had. We don't really think about the fact that they had at his best, top 10 receiver in the league based on how he was playing in 2023. And you just remove him from the equation and now they have to figure it out again. And they're still like a top 10 offense. It's just all the times where shit like this has happened to this team is absolutely wild. All right. I'm glad I did this. I had 4 options for the Texans. Option 1 was draft Chase Bisontis if he's available. He is no longer available. And so now we're down to 3 options. Option 2, which has become option 1 for the Houston Texans, is draft your right tackle of choice. That was going to be Max Iheanachor or Blake Miller. Now it's probably just Blake Miller. They would save about $2 million if they move on from Braden Smith after this year. So it's not prohibitive by any stretch to do that. I also think there is a world where you could play Braden Smith at guard if you had to. And so I think they're still in a spot, Houston and Brett, you have a more insight on this than I do probably, but I think they're still in a spot where you could argue they're in let's find our best five mode, whoever that best five happens to be. So right tackle of choice, probably Blake Miller in this spot is option one. Option two is draft Caden McDonald from Ohio State. We can talk about other defensive linemen here. If you guys like another one better than that, we could talk about the edges here too. Like this is one of those where defensive tackle is probably a bigger need right now than edge, but they still need a third edge rusher, and this might be the spot to find one. They also have picks 38, 59, and 69 in this draft, and so how they handle that stuff positionally is going to be interesting. Like the idea of them getting Zion Young at 38 and not going edge here, like that is a scenario you could easily see play out, something like that. And so I didn't feel as compelled to put edge rusher as one of the options. So draft Caden McDonald as option two. We can talk through that as I'd say that, but now draft Keldrick Falk or your best available edge is option three. I forgot that all my caveats for the Caden McDonald thing was if we included Bisontis, and we didn't. So draft Keldrick Falk or your best available edge is option three. So we've got right tackle of choice, draft Caden McDonald, or draft Keldrick Falk as your three options for the Texans. EJ, what are you doing here?
Well, Bisontis was also my top option, again, off the board. Defensive tackle I did list. I know Brett doesn't love McDonald, so I put McDonald on there just to kind of needle him a little bit.
I saw him wince when I mentioned McDonald. We can talk about the other defensive tackles here if that makes you feel better, Brett.
Well, no, here's the thing is I love Caden McDonald. I just know that the Texans are going to draft not Caden McDonald because they want somebody who can be both a 3 or do like the 2-eye, nose shade stuff because they move guys all over the place. I love Caden McDonald. They want somebody who I think is more role versatile, which the wince is just me acknowledging that it's just not going to happen, even though I love the player.
Go ahead, say his name. Say the other one.
It's Kristen Miller.
There you go.
It's Kristen Miller. That's
press the button.
They could be a Banks team, but the medicals, I'm not here. Can I throw one out at both of you guys? Because this is something the Texans always tend to do, like at least one thing during the draft that like nobody sees coming.
They are weird. They are a weirdly weird drafting team, like a surprisingly weird drafting team that we don't talk about that much.
But then you check why they did something. Like, oh, that actually makes perfect sense. Do people realize that after this season, they have 4 linebackers whose contracts are expiring?
I was going to throw that out as a potential option, off-ball linebacker. Do you think if you were the Texans, that would be one of the top 3 or 4 that you'd be thinking about here?
I just know D'Amico, and he's going to watch Jacob Rodriguez and say, oh, man, that's my guy. That's my guy. And I think that they are going to retain Azeez because Azeez is going to be 30. I think he's turning 30 this season. But Jake Hansen has 1 year left on his deal. To'o has 1 year left on his deal. Like basically the entire linebacking core, including Azeez, has 1 year left. And they got to figure out giving Will Anderson like equity in the team because that's what's going to cost to retain him. We don't know DJ Stroud, but we know what the going rate for quarterbacks is. Whether or not he's worthy of that money, I don't really think that matters anymore. The Nico Collins extension was kind of a baby extension. That was a 3-year deal. So that's coming sooner than you think. Stingley was the same way. That was a 3-year extension. That's probably going to have to be done in a year or two. So, Daniil Hunter just keeps getting these 1-year top of market extensions over and over and over again. They have a lot of money in this team. Lassiter's going to have to get paid. Bullock's going to have to get paid. I don't think that they're going to pay more than one linebacker. And so Jacob Rodriguez, who very easily could start for this team anyway, even over To'o.
I was going to say that. Like, I don't know if Henry To'o even this year is preventing you from picking a linebacker here if you loved one.
Not really. And I would be totally cool with handing the green dot over to him from Azeez. And I know D'Amico loves Azeez, but like we got some hard decisions to make. And I could see them doing that and then hitting DT on day 2.
EJ, I'm going to how do you feel about this? Would you be comfortable with Jacob Rodriguez being the solution here? The only reason I'm going to let you guys hijack the exercise this way is because Bisontis wasn't available. And so we already started in a weird spot with the Texans. EJ, if you feel good about Jacob Rodriguez, I will allow you to step outside of the parameters here and put Jacob Rodriguez on the Texans. I'm feeling generous.
I love the leeway. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. It's a wonderful professional courtesy. I love the idea of if I love Jacob Rodriguez.
It's like his favorite player in the draft.
He's literally my draft crush. He's one of the first guys I ever mentioned on our show back in November. Weirdly enough, this is just an odd one. I'm on the field at the combine, and I try and stay out of everybody's way because it's a job interview. Like this is possibly one of the most important days of their life. So I'm just around the edges. I'm just observing and moving, and I'm not interacting with guys for the most part, unless I already know them or I'd talk to them, and then maybe I met them at Shrine or something, and I'll say hi, and that's it. I'm walking around end of the day, and the linebackers are doing agility drills after everything else. So most people have left, cameras are off, and Jacob Rodriguez is there, and he's cheering all his guys on in his group, and he's a hilarious dude. And he's walking between drills, and he just literally walks up to me and goes, "Hey, I'm Jacob." And I was like, "Huh? I'm EJ Snyder. I'm from Bootleg Football." And I said, strangely enough, I did a thing on you in November. And he just starts talking to me like I'm his buddy. And great guy. And I was super surprised because on the field, he's mean, and that is complimentary. He wants to hit you. And off field, couldn't be a nicer guy, whatever. But I said this to Brett immediately after. I said, man, if that guy ends up in navy and orange, I'm going to lose it. Like, he would be so perfect, the Bears. But the problem is he went out and ran times right then at the 11th hour that completely put him out of their range, because I think 25 is a little early, but I would have no problem, especially with D'Amico, because this is going to be catnip for D'Amico. He's going to look at Jacob Rodriguez, the person, the player, the leader, the turnover machine, 7 forced fumbles, 4 interceptions just last season, 70 stops for him in 14 games. That's an average of 5 a game. He had 1 game with 8. That's more than some guys get in half a season. Like, this is a explosive defensive player who is also a great leader and a great person. Yeah, I could see D'Amico going, I like my Blake Millers. I love my Jacob Rodriguez's.
I really haven't thought about linebacker as like a thing that could even further accelerate the Texans defense. But when you just think about the unit overall, you think about like where are the spots where like, oh, we can get a little bit better here, and maybe that gives it a slightly different feel. Like, linebacker is one of those spots. And so you guys have talked me into this. I'm allowing it to happen. Jacob Rodriguez to the Texans at 28 as part of our final on the clock show here. Let's get to the Kansas City Chiefs at 29. A bit of context. They took Caleb Downs earlier in this exercise, which was a fun pick. I think that, again, when we do it this way, where the person on the other side gets to do the selecting, sometimes you're going to have options or choices that are maybe a little bit different than what the consensus has been as we're trying to pair players with teams and what they would do. And so Caleb Downs went to the Chiefs at 9. I believe it was Jordan Reed who was on that show. So your 3 options for the Kansas City Chiefs at number 29. Option A is draft Denzel Boston, or draft Casey Concepcion if he's available. That response is exactly what I thought and felt the first time I thought about Denzel Boston on the Chiefs.
Yep.
After watching him, the first thing I did after watching him was like, that's it. Like, all I wanted them to do in free agency was sign Jawan Jennings or sign Mike Evans or just do something to get them like a big bodied receiver. And so I have thought about this a lot, and that's why I'm putting it out there. Denzel Boston to Kansas City at 29. Option 2 is draft TJ Parker. After not going edge at 9, potentially going edge here at 29. We can also talk through the other edges available here if you guys want to, but let's put TJ Parker in there for now. Option 3 is sign Chris Johnson. You traded away one of your corners. You let another one go in free agency. So Chris Johnson at corner is option 3. We can also talk right tackle here if you guys want to as a potential option. Obviously, Jalen Moore there now, but is on the final year of his deal. First-round picks is where you often find those players. Do they use one of them on a right tackle in the future, even if it's not as glaring of a need? So 3 options for the Chiefs. Draft Denzel Boston, draft TJ Parker, draft Chris Johnson. Brett, what do you got for me?
So I understand, again, we think about drafting the salad. but boy, I want poutine. And Denzel Boston would just be a delicious, delicious poutine.
That does sound really good right now.
It
Jay,
does, doesn't it?
Talk me out of this because I know what I want to do.
I don't know if I can because this one, Robert, we see exactly the same. Literally my list, Boston or Concepcion. Defensive edge would be Parker or Falk, and in that order. I also put Cassius Howell here as an edge if they want more of a fireballer, but Chris Johnson is my other favorite son in this draft, so I could see the fit really well. But the Denzel Boston thing specifically in terms of Pat being back and having that type of receiver on the boundary. And I know a lot of people have said things about Denzel Boston in terms of what he can't do. And I'm like, you got to go back to the film and watch what he can do because he does a lot of things at a high level. He is not a one-trick pony. He is not complete. I don't think any receiver in this draft is truly complete, even all the way up to the top with Carnell Tate, right? But Boston is and has been, for all the guys that are worried about breakout age and production and whatever, he has been the guy. They focused on it. Everybody knew he was the guy. He still had production. Side note on Boston, I was at the UW Pro Day, and I believe at NFL Films was doing little documentaries on 4 different players. So, and I happened to know somebody that knew the producer that was doing it. I said, "Who is this?" And he said, "Oh, that's Rachel. You should go meet her. She's great." And so I went up and introduced myself, and I just took the opportunity to say, "Oh, have you been following Denzel the whole time, or have you rotated to some of the other players?" And they said, "No. Basically, since right after the season ended, we've done, almost 4 weeks with Denzel Boston following family and workouts and everything else." And I was like, "Oh, how's he been?" Always a good question to ask. And she raved about him, said he is the light in every room that he walks into. Doesn't matter if it's his high school locker room, doesn't matter if it's his family's living room, doesn't matter if it's his locker room at UW. He has been up and down the board, just an ideal guy, which kind of makes him, I don't know, anti-Chiefs. I know some Chiefs fans are going to get mad about that.
Him on the Chiefs board a little.
But in terms of a fit on the football field, I think he is more versatile than a lot of people give him credit for. And he is very, very good at being that dominant outside X, throw it up when you need it, 3rd and 7. And the Chiefs haven't necessarily had that. They've had it sometimes when Rice is on the field, but that hasn't been a count on. And look, Boston comes in, provides that for them. Yeah.
And I think potentially complementary players. I think again, it's funny because Rice when Rice came into the draft, it felt like he might be that guy. And then they just never used him that way. That was never what he was in the NFL. It was just like, very few times was there a bigger, and again, I don't do this the way that you guys do, but very few times over the last 5 or so years would I say there was a bigger gap between NFL deployment and what I thought a player would be coming into the league than what Rashee Rice has been for the Kansas City Chiefs during his time there.
100%. It was a hard right. So I love the idea that they are complementary because I believe they are. And it's also therefore something the Chiefs have been missing. We thought they were going to get it with Rice. They kind of got it in a different way, but that sort of need is still there. And you can literally just drop Denzel Boston in there and kind of, I think we're all just shuddering at the thought.
I'm so glad that you guys support this because as soon as I thought about it for the first time, I was just completely obsessed with it. And to see other people see other people also have it hit their brains in a way that's pleasing really does make me happy. So let's do that. You talking about that lead up to the draft, EJ, is funny. I haven't thought about this in a long time, but the story that essentially started my career, I somehow when I was 21, I convinced Jeremy Maclin to let me follow him around for 4 months before the draft. And so I was at all of his workouts. I was with his family, in those few months. I vividly remember it was 2009 and American Idol was still big then. And they did a Michael Jackson night on American Idol. And I remember being in Jeremy's apartment with him and Sean Weatherspoon watching the Michael Jackson night episode of American Idol. And so I just spent those months with Jeremy Maclin. He just let me hang out with him. And I wrote this huge story about it. And I think in part because of that experience, but also just because I don't do this nearly often enough. This is such an incredible moment in these guys' lives to build to this place and have your life changed forever. And I always was so interested in that period. And so when I was writing more, I wrote a pre-draft profile of a guy every single year. I spent time with Danny Shelton one year. I spent time with Leighton Vander Esch one year. I spent time with Brandon Cooks one year. And it really is just such a cool time. And so the idea that NFL Films would just be following Denzel Boston around and be we're going to chronicle these few months. And at the end of it, it's going to be this really cool moment. I don't often think enough about how much I appreciate that process for these guys because it is really fucking cool.
Yeah, it's a 3-month whirlwind, sometimes more than 3 months. If guys shut it down early or if they play for a team that only plays 12 college games, sometimes they start in like November. But for a lot of guys, especially now, like some of them don't even really start their process until the last week of January, when they're done with the natty. Like all the Indiana guys, they basically went straight from the natty to like all-star games and combine prep. And, it's been an actual whirlwind for them the entire time. And it's a blur. Anytime I've ever talked to a prospect about like what they're going through in this time, like they can't even remember what day it is. And it's like that for
They're all
two
the
and a
same.
half months straight.
They're
Did you
truly
see
all
that-
the same. There's no difference between the days. And it's like they all blend together. You're on a plane going to all these visits. It's like it is a crazy, crazy time. And I was there on draft day. I mean, I'll never forget it. I was there in 2009 draft. I was there he had kind of an adoptive family that he lived with in St. Louis. And I was there on draft day and like watching him fall a little bit and just like seeing that process and just like it was a crazy, crazy experience. And so it is often important, and I don't do it nearly often enough to kind of recenter the human aspect of like what this looks like for these guys. And again, I think that as we play, like let's put our GM hats on and like the way that we do and we like to do, sometimes that gets missed. And I think it's important to kind of recenter that as often as we can.
Well, you were there on draft night when a receiver went to an Andy Reid team, and you probably told him like, "Hey, man, you went to Andy, you're going to be fine." Same thing with Denzel Boston. You went to Andy, you're going to be all right.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Bring it all back around. The Miami Dolphins at 30 are a hard team to do this for because even after taking Spencer Fano with their first round pick in this exercise, they have needs at every position. So you could go any direction that you want here. At the same time, I still feel pretty good about these three options based on how the board has fallen and who's left. Option one, he's back. Draft Casey Concepcion if he's available.
Told you.
And honestly, if you're Miami, and we could talk through this, the idea that there are a lot of people like, we'll throw Mekhi Lemon to them at 11. If you can come back after drafting Spencer Fano at 11 and Casey Concepcion is here at 30, I think you'd feel pretty darn good about that outcome if you were the Dolphins. And so him being here at 30, we can talk through that. Option two is draft TJ Parker. We can talk about the other option at edge here too, but edge is a screaming massive need for this team. Like go look at the Dolphins' current edge depth chart other than Chop Robinson. Go take a look at it and see where we're at right now. They absolutely need some bodies there.
Not a Uche fan? Come on.
Listen, we all had our moment where we were excited about Josh Uche's career, but right now I'm not sure he would be a week one starter for you if you were doing it the right way. Option three, you're the Miami Dolphins, is draft Chris Johnson, the cornerback. So those are your three options if you're Miami. Draft Casey Concepcion, draft TJ Parker / other edges we can talk about, or draft Chris Johnson. Brett, what are you doing if you're Miami?
You've clearly watched a lot of Jeff Hafley. The fact that you put Chris Johnson there, because you're like, okay,
yes.
Can I find an off-zone corner with incredible ball skills and production and instincts, and just plop him into a system that's just going to let him do that every single play? Boy, what a fit. I do have a higher grade on Colton Hood, but as far as fit, like Chris Johnson fits better. But at the same time, I know that this team wants to draft size. Like they want to get bigger, they want to get stronger. Like that's been their mantra the entire offseason. John Eric Sullivan had that quote that I love, and I really do think that he's going to live by it, which is strong doesn't get weak, but fast gets slow. They want strength, they want power, which would be TJ Parker. But at the same time, how do you feel about Tutu Atwell and Jalen Tolbert being their week one starters at receiver?
That's what I said at the beginning. I mean, it's just like
that.
it's so many positions you could make an argument that this is the way that they should go. I think early on in a rebuild, my mind always just defaults to like, let's just take the trench players. Let's just take the trench players. Like if we can go any single direction, let's just take the trench players. But I also really like Casey Concepcion. And I feel like him as like the first receiver that you want to build that room around because you don't have much working right now. I also compared him to Jalen Waddle. When I was watching him, I was like, he kind of moves like Jalen Waddle. He's a little bigger. He's not quite as fast, but I could see the deployment in the NFL like the right deployment being similar to how a team used Jalen Waddle. And so just drafting him with the pick that you got and trading for Jalen Waddle, there's almost like a weird symmetry there that I appreciate. So I understand all of the arguments here, and I think there's a compelling one for pretty much every single one of them. EJ, where's your head at right now with this? For
It
Miami.
lines up pretty well, but you said trench player, and I got to remind you, they already took one. So we've already eaten the vegetables. One of my favorites, Spencer Fano.
Listen, this team is at a nutrient deficit, my friend. You don't have to spend. You can have it 2 straight meals. It is acceptable.
Yeah, no, but they, like you said, they can eat in any of these other categories. And honestly, the first reaction for me here with the Dolphins is the board lined up well because we have so many needs and there are great players at every piece. Love Concepcion, love the fit. Like you, I compared him to Waddle. Love Chris Johnson, love the fit. Already talked about the player. This would be one of the better situations to drop him into. And we talk about situation being so important for rookie success. Chris Johnson would be a natural here. TJ Parker, sure, he's got power. They need it badly. I'm going to throw a curveball in. Quick, name the starting safeties for the Dolphins. I dare you.
Oh, God. I think Dante Trader is one of them.
Isn't Lonnie Johnson there right now?
Yeah, we did it.
Lonnie Johnson?
You picked. You
The
two
fact that
might
I
be
can-
the only ones who could possibly do that ever. I could ask 15 other people today. They wouldn't get one. You got both. Nice job,
I
fellas.
can't describe to you how just warped my brain is. The way that I do that, by the way, is that I literally picture the R-Lads page. I could tell you where Lonnie Johnson's name is on the R-Lads page, like how far down it is. I think it's in all caps. Is it in all caps?
So you're McVay.
That's
you have an
not true at
eidetic
all.
memory,
I
but
have
just
one-
for depth charts.
That's it. That's truly it. It's the one thing
Okay.
I can remember that way.
So you're the McVay of depth charts. Let's narrow it down.
terrifying. It's terrifying.
Yeah. Do either of those safeties, going back to Brett's quote about size, keep you from drafting Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, who's on the board here?
I was going to potentially throw him out as an option. So I don't hate this at all.
You don't have a bad option with the Dolphins, right? You need receiver, Concepcion, great fit, awesome player. You need corner, Chris Johnson, great fit, awesome player. You need safety badly, Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, great fit, awesome player. Reminds me, quite frankly, of several Green Bay safeties, except maybe a little bit bigger, which is kind of scary. And TJ Parker, you couldn't go wrong, but I think he probably comes in fourth in this conversation for me because of price of those positions outside of safety. Certainly wide receiver and corner are more expensive or as expensive as edge. And I think they're better players, right? I think Chris Johnson is a better corner than TJ Parker is an edge. I think Concepcion is a better wide receiver than TJ Parker is an edge. McNeil-Warren a better safety a less important position, but also just talent-wise, I have him ranked above all of those guys.
Yeah.
So in terms of just like in general consensus, if we have needs everywhere and we're just literally taking the best player where we can plug him in and he's going to give us impact, that would be purely BPA would be McNeil-Warren for me.
Let me play devil's advocate. This draft, as far as I understand it, there's some depth at safety. I may or may not have thought about this as a team, a guy that roots for a team that needs a safety and has 2 second-round picks. So if there is a little bit more depth at safety in this draft, and I think that even if you like some of the day 2 receivers, they are all like notably flawed in some way, shape, or form in a way that I don't think Casey Concepcion is. And so I think the drop-off from Concepcion to the receiver options after him and the drop-off from McNeil-Warren to the safety options after him, there's a bigger gap for Concepcion in the field than there is at safety, correct? And so that to me is another argument for wanting Casey Concepcion here versus an Emmanuel McNeil-Warren.
Yeah, I think you're correct. And I think it's a similar drop after Chris Johnson. Like there's other corners I like, but Chris Johnson is easily one of the top 4 corners in this draft for me. But again, it's do you want your quarterback who you just paid a bunch of money to succeed? Like Chris Johnson's not going to help him as much as Casey Concepcion is on the field. So that piece of the political piece of team building of, hey, what do we want to do and what do we really believe about Malik? Are we going to, push the pedal to the floor and stack the board for him? If so, I think it stacks Concepcion, Chris Johnson, Manuel McNeil-Warren, and then TJ Parker as sort of distant fourth.
You feel good about that,
I'm
Brett?
cool with Casey here. Yeah, I'm cool with Casey here. Plus, he gives me special teams value. He's one of the best punt returners in college football. Like, just watch the LSU game. He absolutely destroyed them on special teams.
It's one of those things. I think sometimes we can get a little bit too enamored with how guys move in the punt return game as a way to extrapolate what they can do in other areas. But if you want to see like what Casey Concepcion looks like with the ball in his hands, and that's in like in the open field, the vision, the punt return stuff is where it really does shine through. You also see it elsewhere. It's not just there. Like it does translate to what he looks like on offense, but the punt return stuff is absolutely beautiful. The one name that we did not mention at all, and I was going to kind of throw him out there as like other side of the coin guy to TJ Parker. What do we think about Keldrick Falk here as a potential option if I had thrown him out instead of Parker? Is that more attractive to you, Brett, than a TJ Parker would be for the Dolphins, or less?
I would say it's roughly the same as far as like what they bring to the table right now. I think Parker is higher upside as a pass rusher, but I also acknowledge like he's not there yet. And Falk, same thing. Like great run defender immediately, not there as a pass rusher. Like we're still counting on Chop either way to be the guy. And if you're looking at how Hafley ran that defense in Green Bay, he wasn't getting a whole lot of pass rush out of anybody other than Micah. And so on third down, because he didn't just want Micah to live in Chip City every single third down, he would line him up over the center and basically say like, okay, we're gonna do stunts, we're gonna do slants. Micah, just go find a seam and mess stuff up. And I feel like he's gonna do the same thing with Chop. He's like, I'm not gonna have Chop just get chipped all day. So I think he's gonna deploy him very similar to that on third down. And I think the complementary edge to Chop we can find on day 2 in this class, possibly easier than we could find anything that's analogous to KC. So I understand from that point. Again, McNeil-Warren, I think, is the best player, but as far as like who's going to help this team the most right now, it's probably KC.
When I was a kid and used to go shopping with my dad, and like, we get like go to like a hardware store or whatever, right? Like things you need to fix the house. And inevitably there was like one thing in the whole store that like a 5-year-old would want. Be like, oh, can I get this? That's what Casey Concepcion is after drafting Spencer Fano. Like he's like the toy that you get in the aisle as you walk out if you're John Eric Sullivan at the end of the trip to the hardware store. Like that's what we're doing here for the Miami Dolphins. And so I support that. Let's get to the Patriots at 31. Okay. Option 1, draft Blake Miller. It was going to be Miller or Iheanachor. Iheanachor off the board. So Blake Miller, the right tackle from Clemson, he is option 1 here for New England. Option 2, EJ, I think you'll like this because you've been trying to push him on me the entire show, is draft Cassius Howe.
Oh, interesting.
Going away from like the longer edges here for New England, just because after signing Draymond Jones in free agency, I'm thinking about complementary skill sets. Like, what do they need? They need juice. And so Howell, to me, felt like the edge that might make the most sense for them compared to some of the other options. Option 3 was going to be draft Jacob Rodriguez. I'm open to other off-ball linebacker options here, but because you guys f***ed up my thing, we don't have an option 3 for the New England Patriots.
It's what we do.
Who would you want here if I could give you a third option? Because again, because you guys have hijacked my show, now I have to let you hijack it even more and offer your own third suggestion for New England.
I mean, is it crazy to say McNeil-Warren and have him?
What's the buyer deal? Is it only 1 year?
Yeah, I think it's 2 officially, but it's really 1. And it would be smart to be 1. They really like Craig Woodson, and rightfully so. He played tremendously for them last year.
Oh, it's a 1-year deal for Byard, up to 1 year, $7 million, up to 9. So it's only a 1-year deal for Byard. So that's worth thinking about. I should have looked that up before we started.
Can I interest you in Colton Hood being the future Carlton Davis?
I'm going to throw a wild card in there, and it completely depends on medicals, and it's just kind of one of those at this point of the draft. So Miller is definitely the tackle I had on there. The edges, I went for the bigger, longer, stronger one because Vrabel likes big dudes. So that's your combo platter of Falk, TJ Parker, Zion Young is starting to come into the picture at this point. Defensive tackle is still a need for me, specifically in the middle. And I'm going to throw Caleb Banks out there because at this point, If they're comfortable with a foot, we're literally talking about pick 31 here. He is the most talented big nose in this, and he's more than just a nose, but that's why he is number one. The problem is two foot injuries within the last year for a guy that weighs 330. A lot of teams are very scared about that. Some teams have him off the board because of it. But again, if the Patriots look at him and go, no, we're good with the foot, we're going to drop that guy in the middle. Right now, it's Joshua Farmer, a player I like and is serviceable for nose tackle. You don't have to pay him a lot. He's going to do his role. He's not Caleb Banks. Let's put it that way.
So you're thinking about him being the Kearse Tonga replacement. So when they go into their odd stuff, it's Milton, Banks, Barmore, and they just absolutely annihilate everybody.
Yeah, if he is back to full strength, the idea of him rotating in that line in almost any position, I mean, the interior positions for sure because of his size, but like it's terrifying. If you have Barmore and Williams and Banks as your like starting three, get out of here.
Because even the run pluggers among that defensive tackle group that are still available, like the Kristen Millers and guys like that, those are not like suited to be the nose tackles that you're talking about, right, Brett? And so that even the skill set replacement is there, the body type replacement for a Tonga might not be.
I mean, I look at Caden McDonald. It's like, okay, if we want a nose,
you think he can be that type of player? Okay,
I think Caden would be my nose over Banks, especially because there's less medical stuff here, and he's just better at that role. So if Caden's my nose, Milton and Barmore are still my ends. And let's be realistic, when they're in nickel, Caden's off the field, and it's just Barmore and Milton anyway, because Milton is a great 2-eye, and Barmore also could play 2-eye, but he's devastating as a 3. But when we go into our odd front stuff, we have Caden, Milton, Barmore. You're not running the ball at all on that. So we're just going to get to third and long, which means we're going to be in nickel anyway, which means we're going to have, Milton and Barmore both at 3, and they're just going to tee off on whatever your worst guard is. Boy, I would consider Caden here just to get us into those third and longs.
Yeah, he's my backup.
Totally fair.
Yeah, he's my backup.
The
if they're not happy with the Banks injury, Caden is the next guy in line.
The idea of who is before you mentioned his name, Brett, that was the first place my mind went, is Kearse Tonga is no longer there, and so wanting to have that role within the defense. If Caden McDonald is our answer there, let's do that. So 3 options: draft Blake Miller, draft Cassius Howell, or draft Caden McDonald. What are you doing if you're the Patriots?
I'm good with any of those each.
I'm going to lean Miller. Like, Morgan Moses has been working on duct tape and baling wire for a while, so I'm not sure it's going to hold up one more year. It's a tough league. It's a long season. He's an absolute warrior, no doubt about it. But are you counting on that? And if you don't love it. We're in the Marcus Bryant territory. So if you're not a big Marcus Bryant believer, Blake Miller, ton of starts in the ACC, very athletic for his size, very experienced, is going to be a player that could. Is he going to win the job over a healthy Morgan Moses? No. Is he completely ready if Morgan Moses gets so much as a hangnail? Yes.
Yeah, I think it's some Brussels sprouts here.
I think it's a smart way for them to go. I think that, again, you talk about where Morgan Moses is and just like needing to make sure you're fortifying that offensive line moving forward. I think that's a totally fair argument. Okay, so Blake Miller going to the Patriots at 31. Last one here. The Seattle Seahawks at 32. Option 1 is draft Colton Hood. Chris Johnson's also available here. We can talk through that. Dane had Colton Hood going to the Seahawks in his mock. And so I was like, all right, if Dane thinks that might make sense for them here, let's throw Colton Hood out as an option. Option 2 is just draft your best available edge rusher. This is a team that is comfortable with a lot of different skill sets. They could go a lot of different directions here. The guy they lose is McVay. And so do they want somebody that maybe brings that compared to some of the other bigger bodied guys that they have? So just option 2, wide open, draft your best available edge rusher. Option 3 was going to be draft Chase Bisontis. Option 3 is now, and I'm throwing this out for a specific reason, and it's because we were talking about it with Dane and Brandon Thorne earlier this week. And at his pro day and throughout this process, he's been taking snaps, and that's Keelan Rutledge from Georgia Tech. And so the idea that he could play guard or center for you potentially is why I'm going to throw Rutledge in there as the third option. So for Seattle, option 1, draft Colton Hood. Option 2, draft your best available edge rusher. Option 3 is draft Keelan Rutledge, the interior offensive lineman. EJ, what are you doing?
I love all three of those options. I really do. I think Colton Hood is a hand and glove fit. I completely understand, again, living up here in the Northwest, why Dane would have put him in the mock. He is the style that they want on one edge of that defense to lock guys down, be super physical, and he would fit their group of absolute assassins in the secondary. Hand and glove, no problem with that. In terms of Keelan Rutledge, it's fascinating because Brett famously fell out of his chair during an earlier mock draft. Was that this week? And it was
Oh,
in
no, all the days blur together,
I
man.
know, they all blur together, especially when you hit your head on the desk. No, anyways, no, it was in reaction to the Seahawks in that draft. We hadn't made pick 32, so we were asking who did they pick? And Trev Connor let us know that they picked Emmanuel Pregnon, and Brett celebrated heartily and fell out of his chair. And I was sharing that moment with a fellow Seattle journalist, and he said, "I like it, but I would like it even better if it was Rutledge." So that's a fascinating, just local connection. And I love the versatility and just the meanness. He's going to start, well, he's going to compete. There's a lot of folks in the Northwest that'll say Anthony Bradford got better, and he did, but he's also public enemy number one. That's the two sides of the coin up here. And, Keelan Rutledge would be in competition and I think probably win the right guard spot. And hey, if Sundial goes down, you can slide him over. Again, they've got Olu there, but it gives you flexibility, and that's never a bad thing on the offensive line. So I love both Hood and Rutledge. For edge, I think this one's interesting because there's a player on the board here who we had DJ on earlier this week, and he was talking about having a guy in the room that can really set the example, whether it's the same type of player or not, of just how to do it. And it's Tank Lawrence, right? If you sit Keldrick Falk behind Tank Lawrence, like big, athletic, not necessarily fully formed edge, that's Tank Lawrence. And Tank Lawrence has figured it out. Like he has that dialed, and you put Keldrick Falk behind him and say, do what that guy does, no matter what it is, do what that guy does. That's a great fit for them. So again, it's kind of like the Dolphins. I wouldn't be sad with any of these. Ooh, who am I choosing? I just for pure selfishness sakes, it's Hood. Like I want to see Hood in that defense. It's already mean. You throw him in there, it just gets meaner.
I like the idea of Hood here just because we know Spoon's going to get a big deal, and that just gives us a 5-year runway that kind of offsets the Witherspoon money. And I look at like the day 2 guards. Obviously, there's a bunch of day 2 and day 3 centers in this class, but the day 2 guards that they can try to pull from late in the second round, like I could see them being like a Jalen Farmer team. I could see them being like a Bo Stevens team. I could even see them being like a Jennings Dunker team if they trade up in the second and convert him from tackle into guard. So I think that there's more options for them at the interior offensive line, and there's definitely more options for them at edge and defensive line on day 2. They are not going to get anything approximating Colton Hood on day 2. So I'm good with that.
If you bring Colton Hood in and you want to maximize, right now the only move they made in free agency at corner is Noah Iheanachor. That's it. And so if you want to make sure you're maximizing flexibility after losing Tariq Woolen in free agency, going out and getting that outside corner that lets you use Spoon in all the ways that you want to, you don't have that guy right now. And so I think it makes all the sense in the world to potentially seek that out. And if you can get one at the back half of the first round, I think you have to feel pretty good about it. All right. So we got Colton Hood going to Seattle with our 32nd and final pick of our 2026 on the clock exercise. So let's go through this. Buffalo Bills at 26. You know what? We're going through the whole thing. Okay.
Let's
From
do
1
it.
to 32. First overall, Fernando Mendoza goes to the Las Vegas Raiders. Second overall, Ruben Bain to the New York Jets. Third, Sonny Styles to the Arizona Cardinals. Fourth, Arvell Reese to the Tennessee Titans. Fifth, Francis Maui-Noah to the New York Giants. Sixth, Carnell Tate to the Cleveland Browns. Those were Trevor Sikkema, by the way. Seventh, Jordan Reed making the picks here. Jeremiah Love going to the Washington Commanders. Eighth, David Bailey going to the New Orleans Saints. Ninth, Caleb Downs going to the Kansas City Chiefs. 10th, Mansour Delane going to the Cincinnati Bengals. 11th, Spencer Fano to the Miami Dolphins. 12th, Dylan Thieneman going to the Dallas Cowboys. 13, this is Lance Zierlein's stretch of the proceedings. Mekhi Lemon going to the Los Angeles Rams. Kenyon Sadiq going to the Baltimore Ravens at 14. At 15, Vega Ioane goes to the Tampa Bay Bucks. At 16, Jordan Tyson to the Jets. 17, Caden Proctor to the Lions. 18, Jermod McCoy to the Vikings. Mike Renner on the clock at 19 for the Panthers. Omar Cooper Jr. At 20, Avian Terrell goes to the Dallas Cowboys. At 21, Ty Simpson goes to the Pittsburgh Steelers. At 22, Peter Woods going to the Los Angeles Chargers. 23, Monroe Freeling to the Eagles. 24, Caleb Lomu to the Browns. And at 25, Akeem Mesidor to the Chicago Bears. And then today, we got Chase Bisontis, the guard, going to the Bills at 26. Max Iheanachor at tackle going to the Niners at 27. At 28, the Houston Texans pick Jacob Rodriguez. I was strong-armed. At 29, Denzel Boston going to the Kansas City Chiefs. 30, Casey Concepcion to the Miami Dolphins. 31, Blake Miller to the Patriots. And 32, Colton Hood goes to the Seattle Seahawks. How do you think we did?
Boy, Steelers fans in your comments are going to have a ball. I'll say that. I don't know if that part of the mock has gone live yet, but
oh, it's there. Oh, it's there. It's up.
It's going to be fun.
It has happened.
It's going to be fun.
Listen, I support everything Mike said as part of that conversation. I understand how he got there, and he was the one in the chair. So that's how that's allowed to happen.
Everything Mike said in that conversation.
How would I feel about taking Ty Simpson in the first round? I'd feel pretty mixed about it, is how I'd feel. But I'm not the one making the picks. I can easily distance myself from it.
That's right.
Prediction was he doesn't go in the top 45.
That wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. So we said boldish because we all realized things that we wrote down 2 weeks ago are now less bold, as often happens in the draft. But you said at the top, Robert, that it's going to feel like it was done by 5 different people. Well, I got another one for you. Every NFL draft is done by like 32 different guys officially,
that's
but
true.
more like
That's
300. So it can very much end up looking like a restaurant that was designed by a Burger King, a Pizza Hut, and a White Castle architect. Like it does not come together very well.
I love me a Taco Bell Burger King, or a Taco Bell Pizza Hut. So I'm a big fan of being able to knock out a couple different things at one stop, and that's what we were able to do today. Gentlemen, sincerely appreciate the time. Please tell the people where they can check out the excellent draft work that both of you were doing.
Yeah, you can find that over on the Bootleg Football Podcast channel over on YouTube, or we also distribute the show in audio, but the majority of our audience is on YouTube. And we do a stream every single day of the draft. We cover every single pick live. We don't take any breaks because we're kind of insane about it on draft week, and we are bad at planning. And so we're like, let's just do it straight through, like 18 hours in all 3 days, no breaks. Surely nothing bad can happen. We also do our stream the day before the draft, Draftsman Sees, where everybody comes by and they give their hot takes for the draft. By the time this show goes live, it will be out already. We launched a show with Daniel Jeremiah talking through like team building philosophy and like macro stuff surrounding the draft. And then our last episode of the Blue Chip Committee, which is our collaboration with Trev and Connor from the NFL Stock Exchange. That also is probably live by the time this show goes out. So lots to watch and listen to over on the Bootleg Football Podcast channel.
Amazing. Love it. Appreciate your guys' time. I know it's a busy stretch of the calendar, so thanks for hopping on. Appreciate everyone for listening. We will be back tomorrow with one of our last pre-draft podcasts. Tomorrow, I'm really excited about tomorrow's show. Me and Barnwell are going to dig into all of the conventional wisdom that we consistently hear when it comes to running back value. Is it real? Is it not? Are we wrong? What have we been parroting for the last 5 years that we shouldn't be anymore? What has changed? So I think there's been so much discussion about this, and I've been very open to the idea that some of my positions on this are lightly held, and I'm ready and open to getting my mind changed. And so we're going to hit this in as many different ways as we possibly can. And I'm very excited about having that conversation with him. So that is coming your guys' way tomorrow. For now, this is all we've got. Appreciate you listening. We'll talk to you very soon. Thanks for watching. Follow The Athletic Football Show wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to subscribe on YouTube.